Hello, everybody. You are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. This is your co-host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me on my website, catherinecarrigan.com, unlimitedenergynow.com, and what is social media today. Now, unlimited energy is definitely a term that I would describe for our guest today, Bernadette Boas. And Bernadette is one of my neighbors, as well as being a ball of fire. Bernadette is a business coach and a mindset leadership consultant and keynote speaker. She's the founder and principal of Ball of Fire Consulting, a business management and leadership growth company. With what she called her pink slip to freedom, Bernadette authored her first in a series of books entitled Shedding the Corporate Bitch, Shifting from Bitch to Rich in Life and Business. She most recently finished adapting her book into a feature film screenplay and television series entitled Confessions of a Bitch. As I mentioned, Bernadette is one of my neighbors. Our dogs are friends, and she lives near me in Atlanta, Georgia, where she's been for the past 22 years. Welcome, Bernadette.
Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate you having me.
Now, will you share with everyone your website and your contact information?
All right. Well, people can reach me through two websites, balloffireconsulting.com, as well as sheddingthebitch.com. But they can also link in with me at Bernadette Boas. And then I'm on Facebook. All you have to do is really Google Bernadette Boas, and you're going to find me everywhere. But the balloffireconsulting.com or sheddingthebitch.com is the most expedient way of getting a hold of me.
Okay. Now, Bernadette, here on the Natural Healing Show, as you know, we're basically focused on helping people be healthy naturally. And one of the most important things that we can all do to be healthy naturally is to deal with our stress. So can you share for our listeners, how stressed were you when you were working in corporate America? And what did you learn about stress having been there?
Oh, my Lord. That's a loaded question. No. And I'm not sure if it had anything to do with corporate. So I know a lot of entrepreneurs and whatnot have some issues that they deal with too. I always use a particular term that raises some eyebrows. And I actually had a friend of mine just say, why do you always use the word angst? And that's really the only word that really, for me, kind of conveyed what it was that I was feeling. And that was as if it wasn't just stress, but it was as if like my angst and my stress and whatnot was living right on the surface, and it was just choking my stomach, my heart, my chest, my neck. I just felt like I was just so full of angst. That's the only way I can explain it. And kind of coming from that, what I call shedding or shifting to riches, excuse me, really allowed me to just kind of let a lot of that go and just realize how damaging it was to everything about me, whether it was me physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And then as a result, it was impacting my relationships. It was impacting my clients. It was impacting my career. It was impacting my money. It was impacting everything. So it was just a matter of me acknowledging and recognizing and confronting that in order for me to say that I needed something different than what I was dealing with.
Okay, so your book is called Shedding the Corporate Bitch. What does it mean to shed the bitch?
Well, at first, in early 2008, I was fired from my career, and I was fired kind of indirectly by my mentor and boss of 12 years. And it really caused me to sit back and think about why. And why was I also so happy about losing my career? So I was very conflicted. So as I started writing it, I started writing it thinking I was writing about being a bitch, because I all of a sudden had this realization that, oh my God, I lost my career because I was such a nasty tyrant of a leader, of a boss. Let's not use the word leader because I wasn't, obviously. So of a boss. And then as a result of that, I thought, okay, I need to really purge and analyze and understand why I was that type of person. Well, as I was writing, I thought to myself, this isn't making sense. This isn't making sense that I'm writing about a person who's a bitch. I started realizing that the reason why I was that way was because I was burrowing. How do you say that word? Burying all my insecurities, negativities, intimidations, what I call bitches now, because shedding the corporate bitch is really about shedding whatever it is that's causing you to lash out on the world, in this case, as a corporate bitch. And so that's what shedding the corporate bitch means. And then that's what overall shedding the bitch means, is to shed those insecurities, doubts, negativities, and fears, or bitches, that are holding you back from really being the best person you can be, and really trying to get rid of those so you can create the riches in life that you deserve.
Now, I think a lot of our listeners can really relate to what you're talking about, because, one way or the other, unless we were, born a prince or a princess somewhere with a silver spoon in our mouth, we all have to make a living.
Right.
So it's about learning how to make a living without losing your soul. So how do you go about, shedding the bitch and shedding this negativity that causes us all to feel so unhappy and unhealthy?
Well, this was such a realization and a aha moment for me, and I continue to work on it. But what I realized, not only for myself, but people around me, and especially then the clients that I started working with as a result of it, is, and I have this theory of a paradigm that exists, that people think that they're going to get ahead in life and that they're going to succeed because of how smart or skilled or talented they are. However, we can see, even if you look in culture, even pop culture, you can see that it's really not that makes someone successful. It's how they deal with that. It's how they mentally, emotionally, spiritually feel about themselves. And it's about the mindset and kind of what are we saying to ourselves, in between our ears, that is really causing us to either leverage those skills and talents and those great things about us. I call them riches, to honor your riches. We either go that route, or we live in the comfort of our discomfort and live in our angst and attitudes and negativities and fears and insecurities, or those bitches. So what I started really working on for myself is the confidence and the self-love and my self-esteem, because no one else was going to give it to me. I really learned that when you get fired, after a 25-year career from your longtime mentor and boss, you realize you can lose, everything in a matter of seconds. It has nothing to do with how smart, skilled, or talented or productive you are, or how much money you're making for a business. It has to do with the fact that, in my case, I wasn't the optimal Bernadette, and I was therefore taking it out on everyone around me. So I needed to make a change as far as that was concerned. So it's really working on what's between your ears and focusing on it every day, realizing that the communication you have with someone else, like you and I right now, that's nothing. That's nothing. You need to work on the communication you're having with yourself, because that's all of a sudden going to transpire, or that's not the word, transform into how I talk to you. So that's kind of how I see people really need to focus, what they're saying inside their head to themselves.
Now, Bernadette, I really love and appreciate and respect what you're saying, because so many people think well, if I want to lower my stress, I need to get rid of the corporate job, or I've got to,
No. Right.
I've got to get rid of things. I've got to like sell everything and go move to the mountaintop, right? and some of us can't afford to like, just go live in a tent someplace.
Right.
We have responsibilities.
Right.
So I appreciate that you're talking about changing what's between your ears.
Yep.
So when you talk about how important mindset is over skill set, what do you specifically mean by that?
What I mean by that is just that you certainly want to go out there and get a good education. You want to get out there and train yourself on whatever skill that you want to learn in order to advance your career or your talent. However, as you're working on that, be sure you're spending as much time, if not more time, really being self-aware. I realize that for close to, I'm 55. And despite what the woman at the grocery store said this morning when she said, I'll get a senior discount for 5%. I'm like, how old is senior? She's like 60. I'm like, ah! But that said, so individuals, what they really need to do is just sit down and really focus on, who am I? Like, describe yourself, and not what other people say about you, not what you want to be, but really, how do you see yourself? How do you really kind of talk to yourself? And then really understanding what it is you want out of this life and what is it that you don't want out of this life. So those go back to goals, right? We all have to have goals. And yet it amazes me that 92% of the people do not have goals. So it's really about saying, figure out what's going on inside your head by really understanding who you are, who you want to be, but what you want, what you don't want, what you're willing to do in order to get what you want. And then how can you kind of always be self-aware and present. Just in this conversation right now, I can't be off worrying about my shopping, tasks or my next client, because I need to be right here fully paying attention to you and also in a good state of being. So I need to make sure that what's going on inside my head is not going to all of a sudden project out. And so it's really trying to be conscious and aware of every thought, every feeling, every emotion you're having at any given time. Now, trust me when I say that's not an easy task. That is not an easy task. And it was so impossible for me at first because I lived so outside of myself for so long. I just kind of operated through the world, through life, through my career, not necessarily for what other people wanted, but more so for what I didn't want. And I didn't want kind of my middle class upbringing. I wanted something so different. And yet that caused me to kind of become someone I wasn't. Not to say that I wouldn't be, upper class. It just meant that I kind of allowed myself to be manipulated and to be influenced and to kind of lose myself along the process. So really kind of skill set versus mindset is get the training on your skill set. Absolutely. But be sure you're also focusing as much, if not more time on what's going on inside your head and really trying to articulate it into goals, into action plans, into accountability, into self-awareness. That's what it means.
Now, again, I really appreciate what you're saying, because this is very similar to what I say as a yoga teacher and as a Qigong teacher and as a medical intuitive healer. And so I'm very curious about how you, Bernadette, go about in creating this mindset. So what I do is I wake up in the morning, I pray and I meditate, and I consciously start the day in as an uplifted state as I can,
Right.
In a true state of joy and appreciation.
Right.
Because if I consciously start that day in that way, then I'm setting the tone for the whole day. So how do we become self-aware and more conscious and start this positive mindset that you're talking about?
Well, one, you have to be conscious that you want to get into that state of being, because a lot of people are very comfortable living in their junk because that's all they know, and they can't imagine it being anything different. So one, I would tell somebody to sit down and really make a commitment to themselves. Put it in paper, get it out of your head, put it onto paper, stick it up on a wall, do whatever you have to just kind of always have it in front of you. So as you're trying to become self-aware, there's external things reminding you. That would be the first thing. So then what I tell people is find that time to do that, because a lot of people don't. So I never meditated before. I always prayed, but I prayed as I was kind of falling asleep. I wouldn't pray consciously dedicating time to that. So I totally had to switch up my routine, and because I wanted to, because I made that commitment that I wanted to be different. I wanted a shift. So I would suggest to someone first, make that commitment and find those little life hacks, as people are calling them these days, as to how to do that. So I tell people, and my routine, similar to yours, is my alarm would go off at 5:40 or 6:40, depending upon what kind of mood I'm in. And I use that first, 10 to 19 minutes, and that's based on meditations that I have, to just wake up, but stay where I'm at, and consciously wake up. Okay, I'm awake. And then I will turn on one of my meditations, and I'll use, and now I found an app called Headspace that I have on my phone, and they're only like 3 minutes, 4 minutes. And I use that even when I'm walking the dog. So just spend some time really kind of understanding how you feel in every state of that. So I'll lay there while I'm meditating, and I'll say, okay, how do my feet feel? How do my legs feel? How does my stomach feel? How does my, gut feel? How does my lungs and chest and heart feel? How does my head feel? Am I kind of, not necessarily angst, I don't feel that anymore, but, and I try to shift whatever is not working or not optimal. How does my mental, emotional, spiritual state feel? And I'll start like saying, okay, if I know I'm tired, I can tell when I, wake up, I'm going to be that little extra tired. Then I sit there and I start trying to just talk to myself about energy and productivity and all the things I want to do in the day, and that I do want to be happy and smile. And I have a saying and a mantra that I use that, if God is for me, who could be against me? And that's one of my favorite grounding statements that I say to myself. If God is for me, who could be against me? Now, if you don't believe in God, that's fine. Find something that you can kind of shift wherever you're at the current moment in time. So I do my meditation, but then I do my focused prayer. Now, I say focused because, like I said before I used to pray, but it wasn't very focused. It wasn't intentional. It was kind of, I just did it, and then I moved on. This is very conscious and very focused praying. And I only do it for a few minutes, maybe. It might take 30 seconds, depending upon, what it is. And then I get up, I listen to my news, and I take my dog for a walk. I take in, and I'm shifting the entire time if I have to. I'm just, like this morning, I kind of like got really energetic walking Charlie because I knew I was going to be talking to you. And then I have a meeting after this. And sometimes I'm slow and I'm a morning person though. But all day long, I'm shifting. I am focused on how am I feeling? What am I thinking? What am I saying to myself? Because like I said, what I say to myself is going to come out of here. Whether that's through agitation, whether that's through joy, whether that's through happiness, whether that's through, I don't get depressed, but, a little bit of sad, it's going to come out of my face, my eyes. Real quick, I'll never forget this. If you really want to know if what goes on inside your head means anything, when I say I was angst, I had that very tight, rigid, tyrant type of look about myself. Very tough. People would always say that I had a very hard look to me. And about 2 years after I left corporate, I acknowledged and confronted what I was dealing with internally. I started working on it, started shedding it, as I call it. I ran into a couple of my old colleagues. One of them actually was my boss, and then another colleague. And this was 2 separate occasions. And both of them asked me, they were like, have you had some work done? And I'm like, and I knew what they meant, but I kind of led them on. I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, you look like 10 years younger. And I was like, well, that's what happens when you shed the bitch, you know? And it did. It softened me. It not aged me. The opposite of, it was an anti-aging remedy. So if you want an anti-aging remedy, figure out what's going on in your head, open up your heart, and come up with not a routine, but come up with a process that allows you to center yourself.
Oh, that is such a great story. Now, a lot of our listeners and viewers, they're still in corporate. They're working for the man.
Sure.
And, maybe they've got coworkers who stress them out, or a boss they don't like, and things that they have to do to get paid. When you're on the treadmill, for those people who have not freed themselves and are not entrepreneurs like you and me, what sort of things can they do throughout their day to maintain control of their mind? Because I was talking to a friend of mine recently about how to be happy, and he said, well, I control my environment. Well, we all have this inner environment, which is what you're talking about.
Yes.
For people who are in corporate and they're stressed.
Right.
And
yeah, I don't think it's any different. Well, first off, let me say, I loved corporate. I was really good at it. Well, there's great aspects of where I was really good at it. So whether you're in corporate or entrepreneurial, but I'll speak to those corporate individuals. Just because you work for the man or the woman doesn't mean that you can't control and really manage for yourself everything around you. First off, you may always stay in corporate, but if you've connected yourself in between your ears and you're good about yourself, and like your friend said, you are controlling your internal environment, and you're having a difficult time, managing your external environment, then maybe the question you should be asking is, am I in the right corporate environment? Because one corporate environment is going to be, could be totally different than the other one. So, I run into situations where I find a lot of my clients and a lot of the people that I talk to, they're just in the wrong place. They love the structure. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur. Not everyone can go out on their own, manage themselves, stay structured, stay focused, and actually sell and promote themselves. And that's for another conversation. So, we need those people in corporate as much as we need, people as entrepreneurs. What I often find, though, is that paycheck that comes every 2 weeks is so dependable and is so needed that they're not willing to confront the fact that, it's not that I don't like corporate, it's just that I'm in the wrong place. I have everything going on in here. I just am having a difficult time, managing externally. Now, that said, flip side of that, a lot of them don't know what's going on inside here. Because I will say that the difference between entrepreneurs and corporate is being managed and somewhat controlled by other people somewhat causes you to be a puppet, where you don't necessarily have to do a lot of work in between your ears. Entrepreneurs can't get away with that. They can't, because if not, they don't eat. Now, I'm not saying that corporate people don't run into that situation. I was fired for being a bitch. I was fired for, what I didn't have going on in here. But I lasted 25 years because they overlooked that, because I was so skilled and talented and I produced. So they kept getting the rewards, though, there'll always come a time, for those of you witches out there, there's always comes a time where that behavior and that leadership style will not work. So you need to start working on in here. So what I often find is corporate people don't necessarily do a lot of personal development. They don't go out and seek coaches. They don't go out and seek medical intuitive healers. They don't go out and look for things that entrepreneurs do simply because, one, they're running into them all the time. They're running into all of these resources out at networking events and in their client base and whatnot. Plus, they're often educated that this is the circle of resources you need in order to be successful. Corporate people don't get that opportunity. They should, don't get me wrong, and that's what I do because I work majority back in corporate. That took several years though, because I just didn't want anything to do with it. But, because of my mindset. That's actually a good point, because I wrote a book, Shedding the Corporate Bitch. You would think that would be the perfect client base for me to market it and promote it. And yet it took me 4 or 5 years after I left to want to go back, because I was so afraid that environment would bring out the bitch in me again. And I did not want that. So I really had to work on this and my heart in order for me to then, I can go in corporate now and I just look at all the drama and the politics and the bureaucracy, and I just sit there on the edge and say, okay, I need to help it, but I don't need to become it. And it's so empowering. It's great.
Oh, that's a wonderful thought. I can help it, but I don't need to become it.
Right.
Bernadette, what do you mean by shifting from bitch to rich?
Well, it's exactly that. So our shift to riches formula is a 5-step process. What I realized as I was doing my own shedding in the first 3 to 4 years, I would say, I realized, like, very similar to the death process or the divorce process, you go through stages of transformation. And I all of a sudden, even after I wrote the book, I found these very distinct stages. The first one I realized was discovery. I all of a sudden discovered things about myself because I was forced to, and then I sought it out. So discover, like I said earlier, who are you? Who do you want to be? Who do you not want to be in my case? What do you want? What do you not want? What are you willing to do to get it? All of those different things. Once you discover it, there's a lot of things you have to confront. And I look at confronting in 2 ways. You have to confront those things that you don't like about yourself, those bitches, your fears, your insecurities, your intimidations, your doubts, your negativities, your attitude, your angst. And you have to be honest about it. It wasn't easy for me to go, yeah, I was a tyrant and I treated people like dirt and I got off on it and I enjoyed it. That was hard. I was like on the floor physically in tears, bawling with such shame coming out of my heart. But I let it come out because I knew once I let it out, I could, let it go. So you have to confront all those things, because why do you want to be miserable? Why do you want to be unhappy? Why do you want to be not you, not the best you can be? So, but also in that confront thing is you also have to honor your riches. You also have to honor what is beautiful and good and strong and talented about yourself. And women especially don't do that. They don't spend time to sit down and really honor what they love about themselves. Not what other people think. This isn't about anybody else but yourself. Honor that. So that's in the confront area. And then you need to shed it. Now, shed is really about the things you don't want. And then, of course, you want to acquire and maintain and enrich those riches that you do want. But shedding is also the hard part, because guess what? In my world, it was every single one of my friends. It was my lifestyle. It was, I call it, I've gone from steak to peas. I actually eat string beans, not peas, but string beans doesn't come off the tongue very quick, easily. So, and in making those decisions though, I knew that on the other side of that was going to be whatever it is that I wanted. And I continue to eat peas, and it's because I'm happy doing it now.
Oh, I like peas. Peas are very good for you.
I know they're good for you. I'm not a fan. I try, I eat them, but I'm not a fan. So that's the shedding. You want to really kind of discover, confront, and do those things. Because once you do, you will all of a sudden, and as you're doing it, actually, you're going to be feeling lighter. You're going to be feeling happier. You're going to recognize that you're smiling better. You're going to have people telling you look 5 years younger, 10 years younger. And then you're going to go off and you're going to start wanting to create and accelerate your riches. So you have discover, confront, and shed. That's part of the shedding piece, and then, or the bitches piece, more importantly. And then you create and accelerate your riches, because you're not going to be able to resist. You're not going to be able to ignore wanting to create and accelerate new things in your life, because you're shifting. And all of a sudden, the things that you thought you wanted yesterday, you no longer want. The people that you hung out with yesterday, you no longer want. The, husband, wife, spouse, whatever you had yesterday, you may all of a sudden recognize that they're not the best things for you. So, the house, whatever the case might be, you're going to start creating and accelerating. So shift to riches is actually, the longer term is shift from bitch to rich. But shift to riches is the formula of those 5 stages that I send, whether it's individuals or workshops or even large audiences of. I walk them through that, so they have a tool that they can use in order to always pay attention to what's going on inside the head.
I so appreciate your discussion of mindset, because when we want to manifest something better in our lives, the first step in natural healing is in your mind.
Right.
Who am I? What do I want? And what are the mindset thought patterns that have kept me from manifesting what I want?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Where did the shift to riches formula that you came up with, how did you develop that?
Well, it was really because, I started kind of my shedding, as I call it, probably right after I left corporate, and that was early 2008. And it probably didn't come to me until, well, it definitely didn't come to me until after I wrote the book. So the book was published in late 2011, early 2012. And I just looked back, because I started getting questions, like, especially even those 2 individuals that said, have you had some work done because you look so young? I started thinking to myself, wow, people are actually noticing in this. What was my experiences? I've been journaling since I was about 8 or 9 years old. So in my journaling, I also noticed that I was seeking an understanding of the shedding and the shifting that I was doing. And being a coach and consultant and someone with a lot of content, I also knew the value that if people were coming to me asking me for whatever it was that worked to create, who I am today versus who I was, then I needed to figure out what that was. Because one, it would be selfish of me to hold it back if there's lessons I could be, giving other people and serving other people with. So I just sat down and I thought, okay, what were those stages? Kind of what was my experience over the last 3 years? And at that time, and then I just been working on it ever since, really noticing that there were these distinct phases. And it's not as if, you go through them once and you're done. No. You're going through discovering. You might start, confronting, but then you get a little scared. So you go back to discovering. You might get over to shedding, but then something else crops up and you go right back to having to figure out why you're all wigged out again. But it's a easy tool in order to use, so you're always staying on top of who you are and being self-aware and present as to what it is you want.
Yeah. Now, Bernadette, you mentioned one of my favorite natural healing remedies, and one of the things I love about this is that it's free, and that is actually journaling. And they've done all sorts of scientific research about just how keeping a journal can heal you from all kinds of things that you would never even think about. There's your journal.
Absolutely.
Like, such as asthma. You can heal yourself from asthma from journaling.
Right.
And I know for myself, a couple of years ago, I had kept so many journals that I decided to burn them, and because they were taking over my house. A friend came over, and I think we started about 7 o'clock, and we weren't done until after 1 a.m. I almost burned the house down with all my journals. So journaling And I know that you're a very successful author. So, how does journaling help you stay healthy and also keep track of your own mindset in a day-to-day basis?
Oh my gosh. I wouldn't be who I was without journaling. I mean, I truly believe that. My father, who's now passed, but my father used to carry a small little spiral notebook. He had hundreds of them, always in his, fishing a shirt pocket. And he journaled everything. Now, I'm one of 12 children. So he said he started it because it was his kind of way to track expenses and, what he needed to get at the store for my mother and, what it was costing, just so, I don't know how he did it, but so he can make sure of, cash management. But then I noticed it. I observed my dad doing this all the time. We could be at church and he'll take it out real quick and make a note, or, at a restaurant. So I started it. And what he told me is, he said, Bernadette, look at your journals as if they're a free therapist. Just purge, write. Don't pay attention to what it is that you're writing about. Just use it to kind of really stay kind of, if not conscious and aware, but like, for instance, I could start scribbling and I don't have any idea what I'm writing. I'm just kind of like, because I'm not paying attention to it. I don't really need to know about the words and whether or not they make sense in a sentence. I just need to get the thoughts that I'm having that's running around in my head out, especially if I'm having a tough time. At the same time, when I'm really happy, I love to write and just kind of scribble. Now, I can't imagine burning mine ever. However, I've never read them. Well, I have to take that back, because up until I wrote my book, I had never read them. I would write, I'd turn the page, write, 2 days later, write, the next day, write, but I never went back and really read them. And then I would just stick them, in a box or up on my shelf, of which everyone knew that they went near them, they're dead meat. And then when I, realized that I wanted to write this book and explain what was going on in my world, I then decided that I was going to read them, just to kind of really kind of get the essence of what it was that I was dealing with internally. So, so that's where journaling for me, I mean, journaling just is, I'm going to try to pour some water while we're talking. Journaling is just one of those things that you can use as a free therapist. No one needs to read them. No one needs to, to ever have access to them. Journaling just allows you to really consider, and if you want to pay attention to what it is that you're writing, because you want to, be conscious of what it is you're feeling, that's even better. And journaling, like people use journals to every morning or one time a day to really note what they're grateful for. They use them to really work. I'll use mine to work through a problem, personal or business. Even though I do have a coach, there's a lot of things that I do on my own. So I'll use my journal. But my tasks and what I need to do for work is a completely different type of journal. So I don't combine the two. But journals are a great way to really work through and to acknowledge what's going on in your life, and more so inside you.
So I love these very practical tips about how we can improve our mindset. And when you improve your mindset, you improve your health naturally, no medication.
Yep.
Bernadette, what are 3 tips our listeners can use right now that could start to shift to riches?
One, I'm going to give a 1A and a 1B. 1A, get a journal. Get a journal. I tell my clients and even my friends, you can't set goals and plan and take action and accountability and to recognize and really be aware of what's going on in your life, letting it run around in your head. You can't. That's what's getting you so stressed out. That's what's getting you so kind of lost around, what it is that you want out of this one life that you live that goes really, really, really fast. So I would say 1A is journal. 1B would be use that first few pages to really ask some, tough questions and be really honest with yourself. Who am I? Who do I want to be? What do I not want to be? What do I want out of this life? What do I not want? So I would do that, ask some involved questions. And that's number 2. Number 3 was then turn all of that into goals. Especially, like I said, 92% of individuals do not set goals. Well, I would say that percentage for women is probably even higher. And the reason being is that we don't take enough time to really think about what it is that we want. Now, granted, I am single with no children and not even a spouse. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that I couldn't fall into the victimhood of only worrying about everybody else, because I'm 1 of 12 and I have a big circle of friends and whatnot. You need to take care. You need to self-care. You need to have dreams. You need to have goals. You need to set them, and you need to, really put those goals into an action plan that you can start pursuing. If you started working on those 3, and actually that second and third one, they could be perceived by many as overwhelming, but they don't need to be, because you don't need to have all the answers today. You just start, you made that commitment, remember, and you just start saying to yourself, I do want to learn more about who I really, truly am. And do you have time for one really fast story on that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So about 5 years ago, I have 5 sisters. My mother was alive at the time. And every May, Mother's Day week, we take a beach trip together, and any of our nieces over 21 can come. So I broadcast my own show on Tuesdays at noon, and I'll broadcast them regardless of where I am in the world. I happen to be at my beach trip. I'm recording. I'm both broadcasting and videotape recording. And I was there. My sisters and my mother were kind of scattered about around me, listening and participating. It's Mother's Day week, so it's always a conversation about mothers. So I involve my sisters and my own mother. Well, I'm talking about this very thing. I'm talking about this commitment, this willingness to ask yourself tough questions of who you are and who you want to be and what your goals and dreams are. All of a sudden, I'm getting sniffles going on behind me, tears going on behind me. Now, I should say that I'm the 5th of the 6 girls. And the room was all my older sisters. So my little sister wasn't there. So I turn around as I'm broadcasting. I'm turning around and I see 2 of my sisters bawling their eyes out. They probably hate when I tell this story because I tell it a lot. But truth will set you free. So and afterwards I said, what is going on? Now, they were probably 51 and 52 at the time. And I'm like, what is going on? And they're like, I don't understand what you mean when you say I should have dreams and goals for myself, and that I should write them down, and I should really focus on me versus everybody else. I don't know what that means or looks like. Well, I started bawling my eyes out. So I thought, oh my gosh, I was crying because it was beautiful that they acknowledged that and they recognized that. I was also bawling because I was sad for them. And yet I said, well, then you're in the right place. And that's what we're going to do for the rest of the week, is really help you start that process. So those 3 things, the journal's easy. Go to a store, buy a journal. And those other 2 things, it'll come in time. If you don't have all the answers today, or you're not willing to, and you're feeling some resistance, be easy on yourself. That's okay. But do it only because however long it takes, you're going to get there, and it'll be amazing what the world looks like for you.
Now, Bernadette, share with everyone about your radio show, where they can listen to it and find the recordings.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm going off screen because my dog is about to bark. So my radio show is Shedding the Bitch Radio, and it's on every Tuesday at noon Eastern time. You can always go to blogtalkradio.com/Shedding the Bitch Radio and follow or subscribe to it. And we talk about what we're talking about, all the life issues. What I realized when I was reading or I'm sorry, writing Shedding the Corporate Bitch, people started coming to me saying, I deal with this, but not about corporate. I deal with it about, going through cancer or going through a divorce or raising children on my own or coming out of the closet or, whatever the case might be. So we all have issues. We all have bitches in our world. So Shedding the Bitch Radio really focuses on taking a look of all of those issues impacting women predominantly, but I have men that listen to my program. And I have experts on 3 weeks out of the month to really kind of dig deep. You've been a frequent and most popular guest on our show. And then one time a month, it's typically the first Tuesday of the month, I take your questions and your stories and challenges that you've sent me, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, directly to me at Bernadette Boas at sheddingthebitch.com. And I'll answer your questions on the air. And you even have an opportunity to come on to kind of drill down even further into that discussion.
Now, Bernadette, this is the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. And final question, how has shedding the bitch improved your physical well-being?
Physical. Well, I used to think I was having heart attacks all the time because like I said, angst. I was just, oh my gosh, I was holding everything in my stomach and my chest, and now even when I do get kind of upset or angry or something's going on that's not necessarily good in my world, I have tools that I can ground myself and change that. So it's helped me physically. Could I lose weight? Could I really get my stomach flatter than it is? Sure. But I'm in great health and I am, I have genetic blood pressure issues, but that's genetic. As good as I eat and as much as I work out, it's just genetic and I need some little bit of help. Apart from that, it helped tremendously because I truly believe had I not gone through this process, I would have had a heart attack and a stroke because it's in my family. I would have had it, back then, most definitely.
That's a great testimonial about how changing our mindset really dramatically improves our physical well-being.
Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing, no pill you can buy. There's nothing, no book you can read. Well, maybe all of hers. There's, that is going to get you healthy other than you taking care of what's going on in here.
That is such a great message. Now, Bernadette, will you finish by sharing all your websites and radio contact for everyone?
Sure. And Charlie wants to say hello, but so you can reach me at balloffireconsulting.com as well as sheddingthebitch.com. You can email me directly, Bernadette Boas at ballofireinc.com. Twitter and Facebook is Shed the Bitch. LinkedIn obviously is Bernadette Boas. And like I said, you can Google me and I'm kind of everywhere. I'm easy. And plus my name is quite unique. So, not many Bernadettes and Boas, other than my 11 brothers and sisters, there's not many of us.
You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio with Catherine Carrigan. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a medical intuitive healer and work with clients all over the world by phone, Skype, and Zoom video conference. You can find out more about me at CatherineCarrigan.com, UnlimitedEnergyNow.com, and What is Social Media Today. And my new book, The Difference Between Pain and Suffering, also includes a chapter. It's entitled something like How Healthy and Wealthy People Think Alike, which is what Bernadette and I have been talking about today. So remember, you can change your whole well-being by changing your mindset. Thank you so much for listening and watching to Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, and we will see you next time. Bye.